Y'all, it's a beautiful day, and what's singing this morning? Stentson, come up with me. It made the auditorium shake. Somebody was telling me there. All right, y'all. Stentson Carpenter is known to most all of y'all. The founder of Rainbow Omega. You guys started in 1990. It's founded in 90, and the doors opened in 95. Okay, Stentson, come on up. Okay, all right. Somehow, 51 years ago, Stentson was able to convince the beautiful, lovely, and saintly Diane Poe to marry him. Diane, would you hold up your hand? Okay, all right. Now she, of course, is Diane Poe Carpenter. Yeah, that's right, isn't it? Okay, I always check, before we start. All right. A lot of women keep their name. Actually, some women have changed their name back. It's a new trend. Linda, our people will talk with you after the service, after the class. Now, you met through a first cousin in a rook game. Isn't that right?
Yeah.
Okay, rook. That was the one without no face cards. It was rook. It was legitimate to play rook back then. No poker. And no money changed hands, as far as we know. Okay. All right. You went to Faulkner Bible, degree in sociology. You went to Auburn University in Montgomery, and Sunset School of Preaching. The man is a preacher. Okay. Help me welcome the founder of Rainbow Omega, 21 years, Mr. Stentson Carpenter.
That sounds like my mother introducing me. I always say that when a preacher, I don't know what the word is, goes looking for a new position or a new job or tries out, I always say he's going to preach his best sermon, and his references is going to be his mother and his family. So it's a while before the honeymoon wears off. But I know we got a short time, and so I'm just sort of going to skip the meat and try to hit the highlights of what I'd like to talk about. But today has been really good for me because I really was inspired by today. My wife and I both enjoyed the service. Your preacher gets a little better every time I come, and he did an excellent job today. And the oneness is really what it's all about. We can agree to disagree, but we've got to love each other and be one. And we've shot ourselves in the foot a lot. But the older I get, I realize the meaning of what happened at our wedding. There was some type of miraculous thing that happened, and Diane and I became one. But as I get older, that oneness takes on more meaning. And now, 51 years, being one with her is, you hear people talk about their grandkids and things like that, but being one with my wife is very important. I try to make her think she's a 10, but she's really a 9.9, and God being first. But I would like to say a few words about, I'd maybe say some things about Rainbow Omega. He's talking about the blessings that we do. I'm not going to be able to hold it in my hand and talk. But at Rainbow Omega, things go on in life. Not a day goes by that's something new. It's not mundane. It's something new every day. And we have people, our residents, that say things that's just so simple, but means it is the realism of life. And two of our residents now, one is going through cancer, and the doctors have told us that he may live to Christmas. And a sweet guy. I remember one time years back, we'd come out of service, and the preacher that day had talked about dying and people going to hell. And he came out and he said, Stentson, we got to do something about it. These people are dying without Jesus. We got to do something. And it came out of a mentally retarded man's mouth. And we have one now that's going through. He's a little Downs man. And he'd been stumbling a little bit and falling. And so the doctors have said that the reason he's been doing that is because of tightening up in his spinal cord with some type of growth. And, well, we thought that was going to be taken care of, but 3 days before coming to Birmingham and having surgery, he had a blood clot. And they took him to the hospital, and he had 3 blood clots in his lungs. And so now, can't do any, they put him on a lot of blood thinner, can't do a surgery right now with all that. But the longer we wait, the less chance he has of getting his ability to walk again. And so, but we all go through that, and they take it in such stride that you just wouldn't, really you'd have to be there to understand the love and what goes on in their lives. Can you hear me in the back okay? I don't want to, I'm not a loud speaker. I rarely get excited except when my wife gets a hold of me. But I'd like to talk about a love, maybe I got 15 minutes, Hosea and Gomer. That's a really powerful message in that book. And really the first 3 chapters are the background of the whole book. Just talking, I guess if Hosea could be, he's a champion of lovers. You got to admire this man, a prophet of God. Hosea, he was truly a rare individual. Hosea you might call it the tragedy at the parsonage. So this whole story is God trying to teach Hosea about his life and his preaching and his love for people, and then to teach him how God felt. And I think sometimes, just like at Rainbow Omega, if you don't have your heart in serving those people, it's not going to work out. And I see some today that are working, but they don't have the heart for these people. And especially us. You know, you can do things mundane every day and go to your job. But for Gomer was Hosea's wife. And the experiences he had with her let him really see the heart of God. At that time, there were great wealth in the land. They lived in their summer homes and condos, and then also there was a lot of great immorality. During that time, it said that one father and his son had a relationship with the same whore. And so Hosea was a man of God who had never squandered his righteousness at Baal's altar. And so he, I believe, decided not to marry. And then God came along and commanded him to marry and to take to this lady for his wife. And knowing at the time that they got married, God knowing all along what was going to happen, he sees the future for all of us. And he went out and he took the wife, Gomer, and he brought to the marriage altar, probably during that period of time, that no one brought to the altar as much as he did, and that was a pure life, a pure heart. And when he married this lady, God already knew what was going to take place. But their young marriage, they had 3 children. Probably y'all know all that. But he had 3 children. One of them was along in their life that was beginning to get to where love was not ruling in the house. But I'm sure when they first married that love ruled in that house. And then not too long after that, it began to fade apart. And she was maybe one of these ladies that are wives that said to her husband, "You're spending too much time. I believe you love your ministry more than you love me." Probably got in his face a lot of times. But the angel of, I guess, hurt brought them their first child. And Hosea thought by that first child being born that it would bring love back to their home and it would rule in their home. But Hosea would assure her his love for her was deeper than she could ever imagine. But Israel was soon to be doomed. But now he goes about his teaching and preaching a heavier heart than before. I'm sure for a while Gomer's love caused his work to be easy, but now she no longer shares his concern for Israel. And I believe it's a truism. It may not be Bible, but I believe it's true, that a man finds in his marriage partner either hell on earth or heaven on earth, and vice versa for the lady. And when there's not working together, I know that my wife and I, doing Rainbow Omega, there was lots of times that it was difficult. But I had a woman that wanted more than anything to make our marriage a good marriage and a happy marriage. And even bringing Rainbow Omega where it is today, there was times I was gone 3 to 4 weeks at a time, raising money, telling people our story. And at that time, we didn't have anything to show except a dream. And in that, all along there, we bought a poultry farm. And I take us to that point. My wife worked harder in there in those 10 years than probably ever in her life. And we both worked that together. Years passed by and they had 2 more children. The first one was about victory. Jezreel was a valley there. And then he had 2 more children, and the second one he had doubt about, and then the third one he knew that was not his child. But he still continued to preach the gospel. But I want to get into just a little bit about how he must have felt when she went chasing after other men. And him preaching in the pulpit, an open area, and to see his wife going down the street out there, running after other men. And can you imagine to go through that, where I wish that no man or woman would go through what they went through there, but he went through it for a purpose, to know how God feels when we sin. I mean, it's a terrible thing. But one of the things that brings this home to me is a good friend of mine. He always brought a group to St. Croix when we lived there to knock doors and to encourage young preachers. And they would do evangelism. They'd sometimes spend 3 weeks. And he came every year. And one year he told me about what was going on at his house at that time. And he said he had a detective watching. He suspected his wife to being unfaithful to him. And then one day he went home, just like Hosea did, and there was a note left there by her, and said, "I don't love you anymore. I'm gone." And Gomer really said, "Don't you even speak to me when you see me on the street." But my friend said that in finding that out and then going back home and realizing after he saw the note, he said, "I could have buried her, and it wouldn't hurt as bad as to know that she left me and is now sleeping with another man." Can you imagine what Hosea, when he went home and found the note, and at 9 he'd put his children to bed with not his wife there to tuck them in, and hard to get sleep thinking about that. But that nearly killed him. But I'd like to tell you about 3 lessons real quick, just a few statements about each one. He learned, number 1, the true nature of sin. He learned sin was a tragedy, not just, oh well. God characterized sin by one word, as whoredom. And God characterized a sinner as a whore. Now, a lot of times we don't understand that, but God and Hosea understood it. Hosea learned that God told Hosea, "Your experience is a parallel to mine." But God sees that as sin. Today, a lot of families go through that. And he asked me a while ago, I want to know if I still married to the same woman. And of course the answer is yes. But sometimes I will meet a guy and say something to him, and how's Mary? Well, I'm no longer married to Mary. And today it seems like that a lot of things won't last. We fall in and out of love, or people do, every day. He learned that God was a suffering God. One of the things in his preaching, he would hurt and try to preach as his wife went out whoring around. And the problem is, he still loves her. I mean, this is a suffering thing in this man, and he still loves her with all her unfaithfulness and all of her sin. And so it broke his heart. Do we really believe today that sin breaks God's heart? Little bitty sins we talk about. Probably no one in here has ever been unfaithful to their husband or to their wife. And I remember one time a gentleman was telling me about, he had one of those things on the dash of his car that could detect radar and, keep you from running in a speed trap. Well, he had his grandson that day, and as they got back, and his grandson, about 5 years old, looked up and saw that thing, and he said, "Papa, is that there so you can beat the speed limit and the law won't catch you?" And he said, "After that, I took that thing out and never put it back in there again, because my 5-year-old grandson knew that wasn't right." I don't know if we really believe that we break God's heart. And then Hosea learned that God is eager to forgive. Because one day in Hosea's life, Gomer went on the auction block. And she nobody would buy favors from her anymore. She wasn't the pretty lady that he married years back. But Hosea grabbed everything that he had to his name and went down there to the auction block, and when they began the bidding, he bid on her 1.5 homers of barley, and then he bid a half, and then he took 15 pieces of silver and he put all he had on her. And that's the way God was with us. He put all he had, his son, for us. I'd like to close with a thing about a gentleman in the early 1900s. He was a rich man, had some factories, and that was during the industrial age coming along. But he didn't have a wife. He didn't like to be alone, and so he decided he wanted to marry him a Southern belle. So he came south and began to look around, and one day he was out at somewhat of a park, and there was a place to walk up and down by this river, and he was there walking, and he met this lady. And then, over a course of time, he married her and took her back to up north for life to go on with happiness for him. But got back, and she took sick, and she would scream at night and disturb the neighbors. And she would just say things out of the blue. No one knew what was wrong. No one could help him. And so he even built a wall so she wouldn't disturb the neighbors screaming at night. And so all he knew to do was to go back home, to go back to where he found her, and walk up in the places they walked when they were in the courting stage, young in their life. And that didn't work. He took her back home with the idea that she'll always be this way. And one night he was sitting there, and he was sitting beside the bed and praying. And she woke up and looked over at her husband and said, "Where you been?" He said, "I've been right here all the time." And that's the way God is with us. When we do all the things that we do, God loves us. And when we decide to come home, He's always been there waiting on us. So, what I've tried to say here this morning goes along with what he said in the sermon this morning, is we've got to learn to forgive people. We have to learn to forgive each other. They'd been married before. He had cheated on her. And I asked her, I said, we don't want to do this again unless you can forget about the past and truly forgive him. Oh, you'll always remember it, but you got to forgive him or it'll never work. On a bad day, you'd bring it back up and throw it at him. And they went on and got married. But I appreciate being here with Homewood, and invite you to come anytime to Rainbow Omega. It is a life with 82 people and 110 staff. And there it has to be a lot of forgetting and forgiving. And I'm preaching to the choir, I'm sure. Thank y'all, and God bless you.